Hello, and welcome back to Ancient Aliens in Modern Times. We're your hosts, Melanie Wild and
Stephanie Yelovich. Let's get into it. I almost forgot to say that.
what's your favorite part?
I know, and I've been singing it, and next time I'm going to learn how to say it in another language.
Ooh, can it be Latin?
Yeah, you know what? Fun fact, I took Latin in high school in grade 10.
Well, what do you
I'm
know?
that girl.
I
And
love
it's
that.
it's hilarious, and it's a dead language, and it's also kind of challenging, to be honest.
It's a really
But
pretty language.
it's very pretty, and it's kind of like when you listen to Italian, you hear where a lot of, a lot of our words come from Latin, but especially Italian, I hear a lot of similarities, so
I also
kinda
love
cool.
Italian. When I was in Italy
Me
and
too.
everyone was speaking Italian to me, I was like, "Oh my god, I don't know what you're saying, but keep saying it."
And I love when Italians speak English because their Italian accent and, like, the cadence of their language is just built into how they speak English. It's very endearing and charming to listen to.
It makes it sound prettier than it is, but
Yeah. Okay,
we
next week,
digress.
we'll introduce an Italian, guys.
Okay, so today's episode, carrying on in our Pantheon of Gods series, going back in time. So, last episode, we were speaking more about the 19th century. And now
Mhm.
we are going to rewind to 0 AD
Mm.
and get into some religious conversation.
I love it. I've been waiting for this one. I've been very excited. I know you've been waiting for this one.
Dude, this is my jam. This is
For
like
sure.
I have I will start with like a short version of my story with Yeshua, and he has been a part of my life since I was 13.
Mm.
And I found Jesus at church, and then, there was, like, this like, he came to me in my heart. I started going to church with a friend, um, and, yeah, he just like, there was just this undeniable feeling of love and support within me that he was present in my heart, and I followed that for a while and went to youth group and church, and my I did not grow up religious, my family was not religious, but
Mm.
and then, yeah, it was undeniable, and then a bunch of young people started dying, in my life, and then I turned my back to him, and then when I was in my 20s and going through a very, um, dark journey, I
Mm.
then met my now wife, and then we got married, and, I reached a point when we were trying to get pregnant with our first child that I wasn't getting pregnant after 2 years, and, I just was like, "Okay, on my hands and knees, Yeshua," well, Jesus at that time was what I called him, and God, please, 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 please. And then the next month I was pregnant. So,
Aw.
that was when I started, my relationship with him again, and then because I was into all the new age stuff, it was like it was confusing to me because I was like, "Well, like, I know I like his love in my heart is undeniable, like, I cannot deny that," but I also was, like, looking at biblical text from a new lens and questioning everything, and I was like, it doesn't make sense. His love and the story that we've been given, it doesn't corroborate, like, it just
Mhm.
they don't these 2 things don't match, so I just continued to love him and research him. And so, yeah, it's like, oh, my New Earth Reiki courses are, like, really built around his love and what he taught, and so over the years, I've come to understand, that he grew up in the Essene community, which was a subsect of, Judaism, and but I think, like, the more that I know about the Essenes, the more I would say they called themselves Jews so that they wouldn't draw attention that they were not.
I would
Um,
agree.
Yeah, so it was more of like, we'll go with the title, we'll go with this so that people don't question us and then don't,
Mhm.
um, murder us, which is ultimately what happened
Yeah,
to them. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, so a lot of my, like, initial understanding of the Essenes came from Dolores Cannon's work, and
Mhm,
then I went beyond that and started looking into the Dead Sea Scrolls, and, my Bible of all Bibles became the Essene Gospel of Peace, which I think I've talked about in other episodes, and I've also read from this
yes.
pre-Stephanie as a co-host, that you can go back into my older episodes where I've read a lot of this book because you can't find it in audio,
Mm,
so anyway, the Essene Gospel of Peace is really, um, 4 books about the way, like, the spiritual way of being and
mhm,
connecting to God, and it has a lot to do with purifying your physical vessel so that you ca like, because if you are impure in your physical vessel, then you can't really allow the purest of energies to come in, and give you true transcendence of the darkness that we're experiencing in this world,
mhm.
and so a lot of it is about praying, there's, like, baptism underwater, there's a lot about your diet, there's, like, things about how to give yourself an enema, and a lot of it is through Yeshua himself, his words, right, and what he was teaching.
Wow.
And then the other book that, gave me a lot of insight on this was which is one that I know you love too, was, the story of Anna, the grandmother of
Mhm.
Jesus,
Yes.
and my goodness, if you haven't read that book, you must read that book because it tells just, like, the most beautiful story
Mm,
of the time shortly before Yeshua, his grandmother, his mother, and what life was like at that period of time, especially for women, and
oh, yeah.
yeah, and so anyway, so that is a fully channeled or I don't know if it's channeled or if it's hypnosis.
I think it's yeah, the first is channeled, I believe, if I'm not wrong. I feel like she started to hear, Anna, and then she started to write. She was getting, like, full transmissions, and then I think her second book, which does exist, I cannot remember the title, which is the continuation of the story, that one is under hypnosis, if I'm not
Oh,
wrong.
okay.
Yeah, and I will say the first is the most beautiful.
It's so beautiful. And
Yeah.
like, what I've, like, been doing is because I do know that I mean, it's not just channeled stuff or hypnosis information that, like, take
Mm,
it with a grain of salt, but also stuff that's recorded in text because it's all coming from different perspectives. So, like,
yes.
my goal in my research is to consume as much content as I possibly can and then find the overlaps. So that's where we can be like, okay, well, some people are saying like this source that was from hypnosis and this source that was channeled and this source that was recorded in text all say the same
Mhm.
thing. Well, then maybe that thing might be right. Right.
Yes. And
So,
Mel, I love what you mentioned, sorry to interrupt you.
yeah,
I love what you mentioned about, the information that's in the, what was the first book you mentioned? The gospel, right? The Gospel
the
of the
Essene Gospel
Essenes?
of Peace.
Yeah, the Essene Gospel of Peace, where there's actual instructions on the purification of your physical form. This is
Mhm.
very similar to what the priests and priestesses were doing in, like, earlier days, where they also understood that to be that conduit and that connection to the divine, you needed to be pure to do so. And
Right.
so I think that's a really important thing to note was that we're not just kind of being preached at in a lot of these texts that you've been mentioning, is that we're actually being given an instruction manual, which, goes beyond what, in my opinion, the traditional Bible that many of us know or have read, does.
Well, exactly, and I think that because there's actual tangible steps that these texts have given, that is why they've been hidden from us for so, so,
Exactly.
so long is because
Agree.
it comes down to this control system, these powers that should not be, that were like, "Okay, well, they can't be doing that because if they believe that the kingdom of God is within and they go within, then they won't need to listen to us and what we
Mhm.
say anymore." And so
Yes.
that's where the threat is. And I think that is honestly throughout all of our conversations on these pantheons of gods over these last few weeks, that's ultimately the MO, is that they are trying to keep our power, our divine connection to our creator suppressed because they know that so long as they suppress that, they will maintain control over us.
Mhm.
And but there's also this like with when it comes to religion and what I think that the reason why religion's been created is because there's this innate like wonder within us. Like there's just this knowing that exists, I think, inside every human being, this divine call to feel God's love and this remembrance of where we came from and our true home away from earth. That no matter how much you suppress us in our wisdom and our knowing from within, there's always going to be that tinge of like there's something I'm missing. And so they had to
Mhm.
take control of the narrative, and give us a little bit of that, right? And
Yeah.
so they gave us Jesus in place of Yeshua because they knew that Yeshua's message would completely obliterate their control. And so they
Mhm.
had to they had to take his message, and then they had to transform it and give us just enough truth to say, "Okay, I believe this. I feel his love within my heart. And so
Mhm.
the story that you're telling around this love that I feel within my heart must be true, um,
Mhm.
even though it's not." So
Mhm.
along that, I wanna just kind of paint the picture of what was going on in the time leading up to Yeshua's birth. So, at that time, Judah was under the control of the Roman occupation, where Rome controlled taxation, military, trade, and public order, and then there was also, um so the Romans believed in a polytheistic gods,
Mhm. Mhm.
and but their MO was to maintain control of everybody, but they didn't care who you worshiped, so long as you bent your knee to them. So they were like, Judah can exist as long as Rome has control. You can be Jewish and worship your one God, um, as long as you bend your knee to Rome. And
Mm.
so there was multiple factions of Judaism at that time. So there was the Pharisees, and the Pharisees focused on the laws and the tradition. And then there was the Sadducees, and they were the temple elites, and they worked closely with the power structures. Then there was the Zealots, um, and they were the revolutionaries. They were the ones which I would say that, Yeshua would have had a lot of momentum within this group because they wanted Rome removed from control. And then there were the Essenes,
Mm.
and which we've talked about already, and the Essenes were preserving ancient spiritual knowledge, about purity, inner transformation, and the direct connection to God. Wh which is w there so after Yeshua's crucifixion, they were taken out. They were
Mm.
completely decimated by the
Yes, they
Romans.
were.
Yeah, but before they were completely taken out, they hid their literature. And so, those that literature was discovered, in the Dead Sea Scrolls that were unearthed in the 1940s, as well as the Nag Hammadi Library, which
Wow.
were also discovered, I think, in 1945. So,
Yes.
these are so they laid buried within the sands for almost 2,000 years before this information has come back to us. So over
Wow.
that course of time, because these texts were and I could talk about conspiracies about the burning of the Library of Alexandria and how before that was burned, they moved all of these texts to the libraries within the halls underground the Vatican. But
Mhm.
that's a whole other conversation. So they knew that these texts exist. The Romans knew that these texts exist and they wanted them gone. They did not want people to access this ancient spiritual wisdom about finding your divine connection within through the balance of the feminine and masculine properties. Now,
Mhm.
so we have Rome ruling Judah, but the Jewish are allowed to practice their faith, and then Romans are worshiping a pantheon of gods, which interestingly enough, their pantheon of gods are all named after planets. Or I should say, the
Or
planets are named after the Romans' pantheon of gods. Now, the
isn't that
Romans'
interesting?
pantheon of gods are based off of the Greek pantheon. So, we're gonna get into those pantheons in a couple episodes from now and, like, really dissect who those gods were that they worshipped, because that's also very significant tying this whole story together.
Mhm.
So, we know that the power structure that they're coming from, has existed for many, many years prior, right? And so, okay, where am I in my notes here? So, I wanna talk about, one of the gospels that was hidden. Well, I wanna talk about a couple of them, but I think this will be a good, segue into what Steph really wants to bring up too, because,
Sure.
yeah, you're gonna come in with the divine feminine, which I think
Mhm.
is something that's been so intentionally suppressed. Right?
Absolutely.
And I don't
Yes.
think like, personally, I don't think that it's because, um, masculine is better than
No,
feminine or in their eyes, or, or one is worse or better than the other. I think it's because they're obscuring balance,
I
right? And
agree.
so I think like this, when we start having a conversation about the divine feminine being suppressed, it's not to bash the divine masculine. Both need to
Yes.
exist in
Yes.
harmony and balance,
Yes.
not one over the other. And so
Agreed.
they chose to go with um a power structure of masculinity, not divine masculinity, uh, because of the force that masculinity naturally possesses, right? Like the
Yes.
masculine energy is more dominant energy. And because of where this pantheon has derived from, the
Mhm.
Anunnaks,
Mhm. The
this has
Volvies.
always been their go-to is the physical conquering of others. So, that comes to now so the canonized Bible, which is the Bible that we have today, was developed at the Council of Nicaea in, I think, 325
You got
AD?
it.
Yeah. So
Correct.
325 AD, the Council of Nicaea gathered together and decided which books would be put into the canonized Bible and which would be left out. So many, many were left out, including the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene.
Mhm.
Now, those were hidden in the Nag Hammadi Library, and what I wanna point out is the Gospel of Thomas specifically, was written by, Didymus Judas Thomas, who was a disciple of Yeshua's, so knew him
Yes.
personally, whereas John, Luke, Matthew, and what's the fourth one? What am I forgetting? John, Luke,
Peter?
Matthew. Let me just look at my Bible.
I'm just making up names that I think are biblical. Peter?
Um, Luke,
Luke?
John,
No, you said that.
Mark,
There we go,
duh,
Mark. Of
Mark.
course it's Mark.
They did not know Yeshua personally, and those books were put together. Anyway, no, let's just stick to the Gospel of Thomas. Okay, so the Gospel of Thomas was written by one of Yeshua's actual disciples who knew him personally, and it's basically a list of sayings that Yeshua spoke. And
Mm,
one of which he said, so in saying number 3, I'm going to read it to you. Yeshua
yeah.
said, "If your leaders say to you, 'Look, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is within you and is outside you." So,
Mm,
what is fascinating about this particular saying is that he himself, Yeshua, is saying that the kingdom is within all things, within you, and within all things outside of you. And so
mhm,
that means you don't need to look to the sky where you will not be included. And you do not need to look to the sea where you will not be included, right? Because it's already within you. Yes, it's in the sky and yes, it's in the sea, right?
mhm.
The birds will be fine in their kingdom and the fish will be fine in theirs, but you will also be there within yours, within your own heart. And so it is no wonder that the powers that should not be did not want you to know this information, because then you
Mm,
would not be looking to their authority to tell you what to do to get into heaven, because you're already there within your heart.
mhm,
So I highly recommend reading the Gospel of Thomas. It's honestly a pretty easy read. If you're like someone that's like, "Oh, I don't like the biblical text can overwhelm me." This is
mhm.
pretty straightforward because it's literally a list of sayings that he said, and they're really beautiful. Also, I highly recommend the Essene Gospel of Peace. It's one of my faves. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so what's also interesting about the Gospel of Thomas is there's no birth story, there's no resurrection narrative, there's no miracles. It's just the themes are of self-knowledge, inner awakening, divine spark, and the kingdom within. So
Wow.
it's not this like political book like the rest of them are in the
Yes.
canonized scriptures. Where it's like this fight. Yes, Yeshua was a revolutionary. Yes, he was up against um very strong hold of control system and trying to
Mm,
influence, but that's not like his message wasn't one of war. His message wasn't
yes.
one like, yes, he had to be a part of that, but that's not what
Mhm.
he was about. He was about
Exactly.
returning home to that love within you. And his consort, Mary Magdalene, also wrote a gospel.
Mm,
And within this gospel, I mean, it's very fragmented, so we only have certain parts of it, but, it it suggests that she was Yeshua's closest disciple. And, so she talks about the tension that she had between her and Peter, and she talks about all of the secret teachings that Yeshua had. And yeah, and so I kinda wanna give that to you now, Steph, to talk
sure,
about Mary Magdalene and
sure.
her role in this period of time.
Can I ask a quick question before I hop into that? You
Please
said
do.
something that made me think. So the Lord's Prayer, this prayer that we say all the time in church, and
Yes!
it shows up all the time. A couple questions about that. Number one, so actually, I should preface it with this. I heard one of the most beautiful, transcendent versions of the Lord's Prayer being sung in Aramaic by this
I was gonna
Greek man.
say, was it in Aramaic?
And it was in Aramaic, and if I can be honest, what was beautiful is in the video, it was the man singing, and I believe he was singing it with either a harp or a guitar. It was very, like, stripped down, and it had the Aramaic text, which very honestly looked like light language, if you look at the
It does,
actual,
yeah.
like, language, and then it had the English below it, and what's really beautiful is because we're hearing it in Aramaic, the English translation was almost like a word for word translation, and I finally, like, for the first time, feel like I understood when they say, in heaven as it is on earth."
Mhm.
I finally understood that that meant that Yeshua was telling us to create heaven on earth, or that's how I interpret it, that, like, we can do that ourselves, and he was showing us how, number 1. Number 2, where does the Lord's Prayer come from? I don't actually know, and maybe I'm very ignorant. I don't know if you know, um, but I don't know.
I don't know, but I have
Cool.
heard the Lord's Prayer, straight out of Aramaic, and it's way more
Ooh.
beautiful, and etheric than
Yes,
the Lord's Prayer that was translated from Aramaic to Greek, to English when it
yes, like,
yeah.
I was so moved, and it's like like, I'm emotional talking about it. I heard God. Like, it was so beautiful, and of course, I'm a singer, so if you sing something to me beautifully, like, I will experience that very differently than when you just say words, and I've been saying that prayer, since I was a little girl. Like, my
Oh,
church
have you?
story. Yeah, my church story is a little different in that I did grow up with religious. Like, my mom always we always went to church. My family on my mom's side was Serbian Orthodox, so I've even heard it in Serbian. I don't understand it, and I can't repeat it in Serbian. But then, I was baptized Catholic because on my dad's side, Croatian and Irish Catholic, and, then my mom was kinda like, both of these don't really work, but I really wanna go to church," so we went to an Anglican church, and so I was actually which is the Church of England for those outside of, Canada, and or the Episcopalian Church in the
It's
States,
the church so you can
and
get divorced.
yeah, it's the church that Henry the Eighth created so that he could divorce his wife, and he made himself God 'cause,
That's right.
good times. The monarchy, we love that, um
Oh.
and we talked about that bloodline, so go back a couple episodes and you can find out. But basically, I said that since I was a child, and it's interesting because in my experience, I remember listening to all these words and just always going, "'Kay, there's something missing here." Like, I
Mhm.
hear what you're saying in the church, like, I hear what and I would say that Episcopalian or Anglican is very much Catholic light. Like, it's very much a version of Catholicism that is just kind of slightly different. There's no confession. Like, it's a little bit different. But I think Catholic light is a good description. I think I've said this before in other episodes. My favorite part of the church was when we exchanged peace, when we said peace be with you to the people in the church. But everything else, I always just had this weird feeling, and I just like my little girl self who knew nothing was like, "This feels off, like, we're missing so many pieces here." Also, why aren't we talking about, like, why are the women slaves? Why are they submissive? And why are we not talking about them? And to me, it was shocking, like, "You're calling Mary Magdalene a whore? Like, what?" Like, I didn't
Yeah.
understand. So, do you have the answer to the Lord's Prayer? Shall I segue into
Well, I was just looking
Mary
it up as
Magdalene?
you were giving
Yeah,
your testimony there.
my
Um
my confession.
so the Lord's Prayer, I mean, comes in I kinda wanna read it in Matthew,
Yeah,
uh, and then I wanna read the original Aramaic, um,
please.
because I had found that I don't it came up on, like in, like, a meme or something years
Yeah.
ago, and I was like, "Wow, this is so beautiful."
Mhm.
So I'll
And there's
one sec,
different versions
I'll read
too.
it from my trusty Bible here. I have the New King
Alright,
James Version, and it's
okay.
full of notes. Uh,
And sticky notes.
so in Matthew 6, verse 9, I will start there. So, "In this manner, therefore, pray, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
See, and that's just slightly different from the one that I used to quote as a young person. Do you want
Yeah,
me to say the one that I used to say? It's
you know it.
very subtly different. Oh, I do.
Do
"Our
it.
Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen." That's what I used to say in church.
Um,
Slightly different,
Slightly
pretty much the
different.
same, but not exactly the same, and a little
I
more formal.
I feel like I posted this, the Aramaic one when I found it years ago. I posted it on my Instagram, and now I wanna find it because I feel like it just came up in my
Yeah.
Facebook memories too.
Can I even
But
say too that I'm shocked that I remembered that? Like, that's how excuse me to say, indoctrinated, like
I
because I was a child and that's you quoted that, and I almost had pride that I was a child, like, "Look, I know it off by heart, and I can say it off by heart."
Well, yeah,
Right?
because of course when we're children, we're trying to,
Mm.
gain the approval of our elders,
Yep,
right? And so if you can memorize something that they'll be
yep,
like, "Wow, amazing, good job," then of course you'd feel that way,
yeah,
right?
that's true.
Yeah. So, no, that makes total sense.
Yep,
I'm literally scrolling through my Instagram
that's
trying to
fine.
find this because I
I
just
was
tried to Google it. Oh, here it is. I found it, you guys.
yay, good
Okay,
job, Mel.
here we go. I will read it to you. I don't know where this came from, um, but it was translated directly from Aramaic into English. So, it says, "O cosmic birther of all" where did it go? "O cosmic birther of all radiance and vibration, soften the ground of our being and carve out a space within us where your presence can abide. Fill us with your creativity so that we may be empowered to bear the fruit of your mission. Let each of our actions bear fruit in accordance with our desire. Endow us with the wisdom to produce and share what each being needs to grow and flourish. Untie the tangled threads, of destiny that bind us as we release others from the entanglement of past mistakes. Do not let us be seduced by that which would divert us from our true purpose, but illuminate the opportunities of the present moment. For you are the ground and the fruitful vision, the birth, power, and fulfillment as all is gathered and made whole once again. And so it is."
Wow, I have
Dude,
never
that's
heard that
so
version.
beautiful, and it's so it's so much more than I don't know, like, the one that I read from Matthew is, like, a lot shorter,
Mhm,
and I don't know, it's like, it feels more about control
sure.
than, like this one
Yeah.
acknowledging.
I'm gonna see if I can find too that version of the reel that I was speaking of where it's sung and put it in the show
Oh,
notes,
yeah.
because honestly, like, I don't remember that being the text that was translated underneath it, honestly. But I'll find the one that I experienced and that moved me so much and see if I can include it in the show notes, because it's just I don't know, I think when it's put with song, it becomes something different, so
Oh, totally.
for our
The
listeners, I will
frequency.
work on that for you and look through my Instagram saved reels also to help you find it as well. Thank you, Mel.
Okay.
That was, like This is a very big sidebar, but I just feel like it's such a common text that we hear and that, like, I've been saying since I was a child and, like, why is it the one? Why is it the one that we say all the time?
This is a great question. But can you
Yeah.
tell us about Mary Magdalene?
Yes, I'm gonna do that now. Thank you for that side note. So where I kind of started my timeline and where I was looking is kind of where Mel just left off, or sort of where she started in the middle. So what I was really concerned about and what I really wanted to bring forward was, where was the divine feminine erased from scripture, from society, really? And so just noting that, in the first century, so this is from about like 30 to 100 BCE, women had much more significant roles. So Mary Magdalene, in reality, is the first witness to the resurrection in all four Gospels. Um, and women mentioned, such as Phoebe, Junia, or Unia, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and Priscilla, held leadership roles. And some scholars actually refer to Mary as apostle to the apostles, because she was commissioned to announce the resurrection. So that's pretty important information. And am I correct in saying those things, Mel?
Yeah, totally.
From your knowledge? Okay.
That's why she was the
Um,
first one that saw him outside his tomb.
yes. Yes. And so just stop me if there's anything that's off or doesn't make sense. Um, and I really have to note, there is no evidence in the New Testament that Mary was a prostitute.
None.
Absolutely none. It is not written. And I will tell you where that came from. Um, One of the lines that people like to quote, or is quoted by Yeshua, that we were told that he cast 7 demons from her, a phrase that was often kind of interpreted as illness, spiritual affliction, or suffering. But it was not sexual sin, right? Like, Jesus could have cleansed her chakras, man. Like, 7 demons. What if she had some entity attachments and he helped her rid herself of those? We don't know.
What if she had
Um,
bad Chinese?
yeah, we don't know. 7 demons. And I personally believe, and I've seen this in some of the earlier or more modern teachings, that all the apostles had wives, that they all were in balance and had equality as well within this kind of structure, right? So I don't know, that's not a historical fact that I can prove. But why was there one woman hanging around? Like, where was everybody else's wife, and why don't we talk about them? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just a thought, not researched fact. So what I often think about is divine union. So this is something that we see, in the relationship with Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, is we see this, like, as was stated by Mel in the Gospel of Thomas, I think you said,
Yeah.
or that she was his consort, that she was his companion.
Well, that was in the
And
Gospel of Mary Magdalene.
sorry,
Her
in the
gospel.
Gospel of Mary Magdalene, I knew it was one of the two. And so for me, I'm seeing situations here in our modern day where, like, this idea of divine union, which is where we are learning to purify ourselves as beings, male and female, masculine and feminine, to be able to be very distinct conduits to the divine, as is taught in the Essene Gospel of Peace.
Mhm.
And through that, we find our divine counterpart that, yes, could be destined, but also is perfectly aligned for you and the mission that you have on this planet, and allows a multi-dimensional or high vibrational child to come through, which in turn creates heaven on earth. And I'm not talking about twin flames. That's like kind of a new age concept that I feel like really kind of hammers in, like, bypassing of, honestly, relational abuse. So I do not mean twin flames, I mean divine union, which is very different. So I feel like what's happening a lot nowadays is we have a lot of blurring of the lines of masculine and feminine, gender roles, our food and our water is being poisoned. We vaccinate people and women have become infertile because of this. I've seen it. I've talked to them. I know it's real. So I'm sorry, but you can dispute that, but that is true.
Mhm.
Um, Also lowering sperm count, lowering testosterone levels. What does porn do? It separates us from what is actually making love or what is true like union. And polyamory, which, like, to each their own. I'm not here to call you out if that's what feels comfortable for you and that's the relational structure you want. But I don't believe that that's for the ideal, personally. That's definitely just my opinion.
I don't know,
But that
Steph. I think it's like it's more than just your opinion though, because I think
okay.
it's like it's a cultural way of disassembling balance.
Family unit too.
Yeah, and,
Yeah,
like, I mean, the
yeah,
family unit
you're right.
represents the balance that
Balance.
brings harmony, and
Yeah,
polyamory there's no balance there,
yeah,
right?
I agree,
It's
yeah,
it's fragmented, and the same thing with the twin flame thing. Like, my understanding of what a twin flame is it's like it's a fragmented soul birthed into 2 bodies, and they have to find each
yes,
other and to become whole, which
yeah,
seems so wild to me, because you are born whole.
yes, and so in saying that, divine union doesn't mean, that you give yourself all of yourself to this person and you stop existing or the other way around. You
Right.
have to be that purified channel to call in that union.
Yes.
Um, yes. So I think there's a lot of blurring of a lot of these things and like the things that I just mentioned that are stopping this idea, right? And if we look at when we talked last week about and I will talk more about Mary Magdalene, don't worry, and the divine feminine. If we look at last week we were talking about, the Marxist manifesto, and they were literally speaking about eradicating the family unit. So
Absolutely.
just think about that, right? So I this is my definition. I wrote this. Divine union allows for two souls that are matched well in spiritual and physical traits, destined to come together to create heaven on earth and bring in high dimensional children and
Yeah.
concepts and classes and schools, etc. Um, and I really feel that if the world knew the importance of this, they would understand why erasing the divine feminine from the church and state, even because if we look at how many years female politicians were like a needle in a haystack. Now that's very different, but this benefits the globalists and the powers that should not be, because again, we're getting rid of the family unit. We're getting rid of the voice of a woman being in power.
Well, and
Um,
now, like, because it is about removing the balance, right? So, like, before it was out of balance because all of the people in positions of political, quote, unquote, "power" were
mhm,
male, and now, it's all about the minorities being in positions of power. So
thank
now
you.
the males are being eradicated, right? And
Mhm,
not only are they being eradicated in these positions of power to offset the balance, so now the balance is moving into one of all
yeah,
femininity. It's
yep,
now um it's not only just that, but it's like, to quote Alex Jones, they're putting chemicals in the water to make the frogs gay. But they're like, you look at the men in like, the young men in, like, Gen Z and Gen Alpha that are coming into
yeah,
their early manhood, and, like, they're scrawny, they're thin,
mhm,
like, they lack muscle definition, like, they don't have these broad shoulders like they used to, they don't have
mhm,
body hair like they used to. It's
yep.
like it's very clear that there's an attack on masculinity.
Yes. And you brought something important up too. A lot of these young men have extremely low testosterone and sperm counts,
Mhm.
and that matters. There was an article that I saw that said, sperm will count will be down to 0 by 2050.
I
Is
saw
this
that
kind of
too.
this thing that's been kind of floating around. Do not quote me on that. I don't have academic research it's something that I've seen, and I know others have seen it too. I'm not making it up. But this is key to understanding the fact that the female, the divine feminine, is creates life. We have the
Mhm.
ability to create life. And if you stop men from being able to help women do that, and if you stop women from being in power to be able to be in a role that allows them to create a child, or you make them infertile, or you promote polyamory so that, they decide. And I'm not saying, please note, if you are a woman and you do not want to have a child, I am not coming at you. Your body is your own. No uterus, no opinion. Like, you choose what is right for you. Okay. I'm not saying because you're a woman, you must have a child, but there are many of us that feel that, myself included, that I am here to bring in a high dimensional child. I know he's waiting for me. I totally sense him. And actually, there's some beautiful work out there. Even I have a dear friend who's a medium, Emily the medium. She is online, and she deals with spirit baby connection, which I think is so beautiful because it's connecting women to their child before they come into their body and come to Earth. So that was a plug for her. I was on her podcast as well. She's a lovely, lovely human. And so if you encourage people to erase all of these things, especially, the ability to create, well, what happens to our population?
Goes
Right?
down.
So then let's kind of move now forward. So let's look at like the first and second century. So this is kind of where like institutionalization begins. So the texts begin, and Mel has already touched on all of this, but texts began emphasizing male bishops, male authority structures, and now female submission. So as I mentioned really briefly, remember before Christianity, we had paganism, we had priestesses in temples, and was in Egypt, in Greece, like all over the world. The Druids and the Druidess people did this as well. And what these people did is, and even the oracles, like the state used to consult the oracle before making a move in war or in politics.
Right.
So they would consult the divine feminine to decide whether or not to do what they were going to do. And the priestess was the same as what's described in the Essene Gospel of Peace. Is she was seen as the conduit for God and source, because she basically dedicates and trains her whole life to purifying her body through diet, through prayer, through dedication, and then through learning many spiritual abilities, and through enhancing her spiritual abilities, to keep that connection open and clear. And so why women were chosen is because they can create life. So when you have that direct connection to source, you can create anything.
Yes.
So if we look, as I mentioned, at our dear, beautiful friends, Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, I believe they were each other's divine counterpart. This was a divine union. That was a very important example. Because remember, Yeshua was teaching us to follow his example and telling us that we could do it too. So this is now when I lost my space in the notes. Oh, this is when, if we look at like the Essene text, so Mel already mentioned this, the Nag Hammadi, which was found in 1945, portray Mary very, very differently. So the Gospel of Mary, it notes that she receives many teachings from Yeshua. And again, because they were in union to one another, these concepts they knew were so important were very easily shared. And it was very equal. It wasn't like she was privileged to receive them. It was just natural that she would receive them. And male disciples challenge her authority, as Mel mentioned as well. And she defends her right to teach, as she should. And then in the Gospel of Philip, I wrote down, this is research because I did not know this before today, Mary is described as Jesus's closest companion. I fully believe she was his wife. She was the love of his life on top of all of that. And so these texts portray Mary as a spiritual authority, not a fallen woman. What
Mm.
does that do for the men in power? Well, it does not help them stay in power, does it? So many speak to, and this was something that always fascinated me, was we speak of her travels and Yeshua's travels to Egypt and to India. And these are not described in the Bible. We have no information about what they were doing and what they were learning. And that's where, after reading, so Dolores Cannon's work, I've read both. They Walked with Jesus and Jesus and the Essenes, which I highly recommend if you haven't. what I like about it is it follows the individuals who remembered their lives as Essenes, but one of the women that she regresses is actually a Jewish woman who knows nothing about Christianity. I think she's an American woman who was Jewish, who of course grew up in the Jewish tradition. So for me,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to believe that, because I don't think a Jewish woman who doesn't know this information would be like, yeah, let's do this regression.
Would be making it
Um,
up.
yeah, or be making it up because she wouldn't
Yeah.
know. And some of the things that were shared were almost too. I just don't believe that it could be made up. There's no way. And then another two books, Anna, Grandmother of Jesus, as Mel's talked about. It's so beautiful. The author of that is Claire Hartsong. And then one that's really, really moving and really powerful as well, and focuses more on like the idea of tantric magic. And these are teachings that came from when Mary went to Egypt, and there is belief that she was a priestess of Isis. So in her time going to Egypt and doing this pilgrimage with Yeshua, they actually did and I mentioned this in our other episode, Mel, like the first episode we ever recorded together. Their
Yeah.
pilgrimage started in the south of Egypt, and then they traveled up the Nile, and they finished at the pyramid where they had their final initiation, which
Mm.
all involved sound healing and activation of the pyramid. And I believe that pyramid is an initiation place for the children of the Law of One, who
Right.
I believe are also Yeshua and Mary. And
Yes.
all of the Essenes, understanding this connection to the one source, the one God. Um, so because I personally see her, and many other people see her as a priestess of Isis. She was highly evolved as a spiritual teacher, as someone that had direct access to her spiritual abilities and her connection to source, and she carried deep ancient knowledge. So to discredit her again would be very helpful to the powers that should not be. She also, and this is talked about in Anna, Grandmother of Jesus, that these people knew how to basically retain their memory as they incarnated into other bodies. And so that was described in that episode, The Ancient Secrets of the Flower of Life, where Akhenaten supposedly in his mystery school taught multiple people to be immortal. And I say that in quotations because what he taught them to do was to maintain their memory as they traveled to a different body. So there was no amnesia when they entered into their next incarnation. And I firmly believe that these people and that Yeshua and Mary were able to do this.
I agree.
Yeah. And so these are the mysteries, right? That we're not taught about or told about because they empower the idea of self-mastery. And so let me see where I am here. So what I love, I love the idea of thinking of Mary and Yeshua, or Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, as almost like a spiritual user manual to understand these concepts, but also divine union and how to, walk and in this way. And I think a lot of the texts that we're kind of referencing here, and you've already mentioned them, and how important, their work was. And as we continue on from the 2nd to the 4th century, I'm just looking at our time here. Okay, we're okay. This is where the divine feminine really now starts to become problematic. So many early Christian and Gnostic traditions, and we've talked about this in other episodes, contain feminine aspects of the divine. So Sophia, who represented wisdom, and then interestingly, in some Syrian traditions, and I don't mean the alien Syrians, I mean the human Syrians, they would speak of the divine in terms of the feminine, which is kind of cool, and I didn't know that until recently. And so as church orthodoxy became centralized, these teachings, like the Gnostic teachings, started to be rejected as heretical, and they started to be seen that way. So there's 3 important figures that wrote about the heresy of these teachings. There was Irenaeus. I said it wrong
Yeah.
the first time.
Irenaeus.
Tertullian, and hold on, Epiphanes of Salamis. So these writers actively opposed groups that gave women teaching authority or emphasized feminine divine imagery. And then we come to, as Mel mentioned, the Council of Nicaea, which was in 325 CE. And so that's where the Bible was established, you say, but a couple other things happened that I noted, which was interesting. The common modern claim is that the divine feminine was removed at Nicaea. And it says historically, like my research said historically, that's not accurate, but I would say it totally is accurate because they created the Bible, which totally just removed the divine feminine. And so this council primarily addressed the nature of Christ, the Arian controversy, which I found really interesting, and church unity. So it helped accelerate, unfortunately, the consolidation of authority under a male episcopal hierarchy. So then
Mhm.
the turning point for how she was seen really happens, like when Mary Magdalene becomes a prostitute, or a whore, I say in quotations, was 591 CE. Pope Gregory the Great, Pope Gregory the First is how he was known. In a famous sermon, Pope Gregory merged three separate women from the Bible. So one was Mary Magdalene. Two was the unnamed sinful woman who anoints Jesus' feet in Luke 7, and Mary of Bethany. And so the New Testament, so going back to what's actually written, the New Testament never identifies these women as the same person. So that
Hmm.
was a pope, Pope Gregory in 591 BC, that used this kind of false narrative in his sermon. And he just simply combined them into one character. And because the unnamed woman was assumed to be sexually sinful, Mary Magdalene inherited that reputation. So that's actually where it comes from. And this became one of the most successful rebrandings in religious history. I love looking at it that way. We're just going to rebrand Mary Magdalene in the Bible. So
Well,
for
and that was because her message, they don't
yeah,
want you to
yeah,
know.
yeah, everything we just discussed.
Yeah.
And so if we look at the years, so for nearly 1,400 years or more, many Christians assumed that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, that she repented after meeting Jesus or Yeshua, and her importance was secondary to male apostles. And none of this is stated in biblical text.
None of it.
None of it. And,
By design.
by design. And like again, let's look at when you say the New King James Bible. It was changed because a king said it should be. Like we need to look at the fact that some dude said, "I want to create a religion so I can get a divorce." And then another dude said, "I'm going to change all of these scriptures to suit my narrative so I can stay in control and power." But then you have fanatic Christians coming at you. Well, you more so, Mel, because I don't post content like you do. You know, like calling you a heretic and telling you need to die because you're saying these things. Well, my friends, you're basing your life on a lot of bullshit.
A
Sorry,
lot of
but
it.
you are. You are.
And
And
if you wanna have a more unaltered, I mean, I still don't believe it's entirely pure,
mm-mm.
Bible, the Ethiopian Bible, which I also
Yes.
have.
Yes.
I have many Bibles, my friends. I am not Christian, but I am determined to get to the
She's a
bottom of this.
researcher, though.
But the Ethiopian Bible, I would say is less augmented than
Mm.
especially the New King James Version. What I like about the New King James Version is it's violent, um,
Yeah.
and really, really, I think its MO is to really bring fear of God,
Yes.
um,
Agree.
into the heart and soul of the followers, which is so
Yeah.
culty. Like, how is that not a cult?
Yeah. Well,
But
and involving some blood sacrifice
with a bunch of blood sacrifice. Fear
and
your leader,
cannibalism.
cannibal, fear your
Sorry.
leader, eat each other, uh,
Mhm.
sorry, no, eat your leader's son, um, call it communion. Anyway, so for those listening that are, like, super intrigued about Mary Magdalene's message, years ago, I've actually read this book a couple times. It's called Mary Magdalene Revealed by
Mm,
Megan Watterson. It is I've actually sorry, I haven't read it. I've listened to it on Audible.
mm,
Um, it's a beautiful account of the Gospel of Mary, uh, but also, like, paralleling her messages to real world and to, like, how to actually
yes.
use what she was preaching into your modern life. So, anyway, I really, really loved that book because it's just really beautiful. It brought me to tears multiple times,
Mm,
in just hearing that, empowering nature because, like, us women have been shit on our entire
yeah.
especially as millennial women, I would say,
Yep,
like, we grew up
yep.
in diet culture, like, where Britney Spears
Mm.
was fat, like, give me a break.
Oh god.
Um, and so it's like,
And
it
talking
really
about
is so empowering to hear a woman tell you, like, ways in which you don't need to go see a male priest to be anointed in God's love. Like, it's just it's just a really, really empowering read, so I highly recommend that one as well. And the other thing I wanted to say about this, like, intentional suppression of these gods, right? Like,
mhm,
Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, like, when we're talking about this pantheon, we're talking about these 2 specifically. They were suppressed because the powers that should not be at that time wanted to be the gods, right?
mhm,
And so, like, at that time, it was the Roman Empire, but the but what I wanna just add before we wrap up the episode is that it wasn't just the Roman Empire, right? Like, it was the Sadducees that turned Yeshua in. They were
mm,
all in it together. And so I wanna connect that dot before we finish today because we see this in modern times too, where it's like, here you have, as history tells you, 2 opposing factions of world leadership that publicly we're told are working against one another, but behind the scenes, they're working together, right? And so it's like you have the Romans and you have the Jews, and they are literally working together to
mhm.
bring down a mutual opponent, which was at
Yes,
that time Yeshua. And it wasn't necessarily Yeshua, but it was his message that they were
yes.
bringing down. And so look at that in modern world where it's like you have the left and the right,
Mhm,
right? We have Trump and MAGA, and we have Mark Carney and the libs. And you're presented with this public narrative that they're working against each other, but
mhm.
you know who their mutual opponent is? It's not Yeshua this time, it's you, it's us. It's the kingdom of God within, and that's always been their opponent. And so,
Mhm,
stop picking sides because that's exactly where they want us. Come
yep.
home to God, purify your vessel, find that light within, and that's really what it's about. It's really what we're here
You
for
got it,
is
girl.
yeah. So, all of these hidden scriptures, hidden texts can help you come to that realization,
Mhm,
and I think that's really important, and looking to these ancient texts can be really, really helpful, but also don't get lost in the study of it, like,
yeah.
find yourself in the practice too.
That's beautiful, Mel. That's really key because I think, as we talked about last week, it's so important to avail ourselves of all the information that we can, even if someone tells you it's banned or it's evil. Well, how am I supposed to know that unless I can see it for myself? Right? So read the text, sit with yourself, and continue to develop your discernment and your senses and your gifts because that is the true compass. That's what's going to actually give you, is this right or is it wrong?
Absolutely.
And with saying that, may peace be with you, my dear friend.
May peace be with you.